this episode, we want to do something a little different. The Louisiana film we're looking at in this episode is over 100 years old and was very important to our country. But even before the film, we thought it important to know how it came about, and to do this, we have to go back even further. In 1859, businessman Henry Dunant witnessed the aftermath of the Battle of Solferino in Italy, which left 40,000 troops dead, wounded, or missing. The region was not prepared to handle anywhere near that amount of casualties. By 1863, Dunant and 4 other men established a committee which later became the International Red Cross, which was a humanitarian organization to help victims of disasters. In 1861, in the United States, Clara Barton, a worker at the U.S. Patent Office, voluntarily began delivering food and supplies to the soldiers on the front lines in the Civil War. By the end of the war, she was called the Angel of the Battlefield. At the end of the Civil War, Barton established a Missing Soldiers Bureau and helped track down and locate over 20,000 men who had gone missing from the war. In the late 1860s, Barton traveled to Europe to recuperate from her work and learned about the Red Cross organization, and in 1881 was able to found the American chapter. For the first time in 1898, they provided medical care for the soldiers of the Spanish-American War. While they continued to open chapters, their core remained very small. At the beginning of World War I, they had a paid staff of 25, with no Red Cross nurses enrolled for service in the military. By the end of the war, they had over 12,000 paid staff, over 23,000 nurses, 8 million volunteers, and 20 million members. So, let's flash back to 1918 to see the expansion of the Red Cross and the role that the film industry and Louisiana played in their growth in the spirit of the Red Cross. At the beginning of World War I, the American Red Cross was a very small organization still in the process of developing its identity and programs. It had been involved in Europe since early in the First World War as support, sending relief ships with medical personnel and supplies to be distributed among our ally nations in the war. After the United States declared war against Germany on April 6, 1917, the mission of the U.S. chapter of the Red Cross was suddenly forced into a massive expansion to include all the various needs of both wounded and recuperating American soldiers in battle, and even organizing public health and education projects in war-torn countries. This was extremely expensive and necessitated the first war fund drive of June of 1917, which raised more than $110 million. By the spring of 1918, however, these funds were almost exhausted. When the Red Cross announced its plan for a second Red Cross drive to run from May 20th to May 27th of 1918, they requested the help of the motion picture industry, whose mass media technology had dominated American culture. It was their hope that seeing a movie about the war and the Red Cross efforts would encourage Americans to donate and volunteer. The National Association of the Motion Picture Industry, chaired by famed producer Jesse Lasky, was appointed by the government to assist the Red Cross with this project. Jack Eaton, president of Town and Country Films, was called upon to produce a 2-reel film titled The Spirit of the Red Cross. Legendary artist James Montgomery Flagg was commissioned to write the story. Flagg is best known as the creator of the famous We Want You recruiting poster. Flagg had earlier tested his hand at motion pictures through his American short reel subjects called Girls You Know, which was released through the George Klein service. The Spirit of the Red Cross tells the story of an American youth named Sammy who leaves his sweetheart Ethel to sail to France with his regiment. Ethel follows as a Red Cross nurse. Sammy sees the work the Red Cross is doing for refugees as well as the wounded. And all through his experiences at the front, he holds a vision of Ethel in her white uniform watching over him. After a charge injures him, he lays on the ground with a bullet in his chest, half conscious. The vision of Ethel awakes him just as a German soldier comes forward slaying the wounded. Sammy grips his revolver and shoots the enemy. Later he is moved to the base hospital where Ethel finds him as a patient and nurses him back to health. The Spirit of the Red Cross starred Peggy Adams as Ethel. Canadian-born Adams was a popular silent film actress. She started her career as Clara Adams and was part of an ensemble cast at Edison Films. At the outbreak of World War I, she left films for the Nursing Corps, returning in 1917 as Peggy Adams. She had appeared in several of Flagg's earlier comedies. Raymond McKee starred as Sammy. McKee was an American stage and screen actor performing in over 170 films. After filming, he enlisted as a sergeant in the Medical Corps of the Army and reportedly wore his uniform in 4 war-themed films. Saul Harrison served as the film's director. Harrison was the brother of C.S. Harrison, the president of Harcourt Film Company. Harcourt was a New Orleans-based production company that specialized in education and industrial films, but also produced feature films, advertising, and regional events for newsreels. The scenario written by Flagg called for scenes in a French city, and according to the reports at the time, that could only be truthfully portrayed in the French Quarter of New Orleans. The cast and crew arrived in the city in mid-February of 1918 to begin location shooting. The War Department's cooperation enabled Eaton to have regular Army troops from Jackson Barracks for his French city scenes. Major Hasbrook, the Jackson Barracks commander, was under orders to assist in the making of the picture, and he detailed a large contingent of regular troops to give the necessary military aspect to the action. From New Orleans, the company traveled to Camp Shelby in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, where 40,000 men, formerly the National Guardsmen of Indiana, Kentucky, and West Virginia, were in training. They produced trench warfare scenes and, by the use of dynamite and large quantities of TNT, secured realistic effects, blowing up whole lines of trenches. Most of the interior scenes were completed at the Biograph Studio in New York, which included some private home sets, a portrayal of a Red Cross canteen in France, and interiors of frontline dugouts. In order to ensure that most Americans would see the film, the Spirit of the Red Cross was provided to theater exchanges free of charge. According to announcements made by Jesse Lasky, members of the National Association of Motion Picture Industry were allotted a number of prints of the film for free bookings. He added that it was their desire to keep these prints working so that not a single day would be lost during the given period, but that the film would be shown in certain theaters of every territory throughout the country. A letter from Pathé was provided to all distributing organizations, further explaining that the handling of the film and its importance to the Red Cross. In addition, exhibitors were donating all the proceeds from the screenings to the cause. The goal of the drive was to raise $100 million, which in today's money is over $2 billion. By the time the armistice was declared in November of 1918, only 7 months after the film's release, the Red Cross had raised approximately 4 times that amount. The film is credited with playing a major role in the campaign's success. By the war's end, 1/3 of the U.S. population, almost 39 million people, were either contributing members of the Red Cross or serving as volunteers. Unfortunately, the Spirit of the Red Cross is believed to be a lost film. This has been a presentation of Hollywood on the Bayou, preserving Louisiana's rich film history with books, prints, presentations, and exhibits. If you have questions, comments, or to learn more, you can visit our Facebook page or sign up for our Louisiana in Film newsletter, which is on our website, HollywoodOnTheBayou.com. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Louisiana Film History Flashback. Sue and I thank you, and we'll see you next time.